today's session, this precious special session, will help you to develop this amazing and subtle tool of consciousness and to take us on this powerful journey of self-exploration. We have with us one of our senior yogis, Denise Lawrence. So get ready to be inspired, challenged, and empowered as we give a very warm Tuesday morning family. Once family, welcome to Denise. It's over to you, Denise. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Madhavi, and hello to everyone. So the third eye, and this is a very special and important aspect of spiritual knowledge. And so, first of all, I think I'll look at some of the beliefs that people have about the third eye. I'm particularly interested in the third eye because since childhood, when people would ask me, okay, what do you want? I would say, I want the third eye. I didn't know what that was, but for some reason, it was the strongest desire I've had through the whole life. And once I came into contact with the knowledge that is taught at the Brahma Kumaris, which is all about the third eye, I said, yes. I have arrived at my destination, which is also a gateway to a new landscape, the landscape whereby you can see not only with your two eyes, but also with the third eye. So the third eye is an instrument of perception. And with your two eyes, all you can see is visual phenomena. And you depend on having good eyes. Of course, many people have glasses because the eyes degenerate. Some people are born blind, some people become blind, and then they cannot experience visual phenomena. But the third eye is not about anything that you can perceive through sense perception. It's a different kind of perception. And this is why it is sometimes called the divine eye. But I think the eye of wisdom is a good description of it, because wisdom means understanding. And when you understand something, you say, I see what you mean, or I see what you're talking about. We use the word see for understanding. And the third eye is absolutely connected with being able to perceive in the sense of understand and work with the non-visible dimension of human existence. It is sometimes called the eye of the mind, or the mind's eye. And you know this expression, it's all in the mind. And this is quite more interesting than people realize, because anytime you experience something through your eyes, you experience it in your mind. Although it seems that what you are seeing is on the outside of your body, the place where you experience it is in your mind, because your mind is the instrument of perception which receives the information sent to the brain from the eyes. And you can see what is there in the material world, but your eyes cannot see the invisible world, but the invisible world exists. And so many people who are aware that there is the invisible world, well, they want to see it. And for this, you need the third eye. And the invisible world is not an invisible version of the visible world. It's something very different altogether. And it is really to do with wisdom, because we human beings actually have a right to both the visible world and the invisible world. And when we do not have access to the invisible world, it limits our understanding of the visible world to a gigantic degree. And this is why the third eye is absolutely essential. But we live in a materialist society, and even if you look at how people talk in terms of religion, most of the time they're talking about visible aspects. The invisible aspects are not generally defined or described very clearly. They're mentioned, and you hear about it. You may be told, oh, you have to have faith in it, but you can't understand it because there isn't information. So the information about the invisible world is part of the matter of receiving the third eye. So the third eye is something that you receive. It's not something that you're born with. You are born with a mind, but you're not born with the wisdom of understanding the inner world or the invisible world. And it is said that God is the giver of the third eye. And you see in India, where the third eye is depicted in different religious icons, the third eye is positioned as a kind of vertical eye. We have these two eyes are horizontally presented, and we look at ourselves in the mirror. Our eyes are horizontal, but the third eye is vertical. And that indicates that the third eye sees things which are on a higher level of awareness. And it's also positioned in the center of the forehead. And so the center of the forehead is the location of the soul. And so once you have awareness of the soul, you get that through receiving the third eye. And so from that angle, the third eye is the eye of knowledge, of information. So information about the invisible world cannot come through investigation or through analysis or microscopes or telescopes or anything like that, which only can show us about material things. And the third eye is non-material. The mind is non-material. Everybody has one, but nobody knows what it looks like, if it looks like anything. And in fact, it's not a thing, it's an ability. But we assume that it's a thing because we call it the mind. I have a mind. I have something on my mind, in my mind. Someone may be out of their mind. So it's quite a vague thing. But the mind is to do with perception and interpretation of what we see through our two eyes. But the mind is also important for interpreting and perceiving what we understand through the knowledge of spiritual matters that we can grasp when we have the third eye. So the third eye is very, very subtle. And usually in India, those who are depicted with the third eye are the goddesses, and there are some gods who have the third eye. And then there are also many gods and goddesses who don't have the third eye. So there are different categories of gods and goddesses in the Hindu iconography, and the whole pantheistic panoply of divine beings. Angels don't usually get shown with the third eye, but the third eye refers to also very special powers. And in some respects, the third eye is considered as a weapon. And for example, it is said for one particular Indian deity by the name of Shankar, that when he opened his third eye, the world burnt up. And so that's kind of scary, but it's also very full of symbolic meaning. And burning something up doesn't mean that you set fire to it. What it means is that what you realize that whatever you can see through your two eyes is perishable. And once you see that, it changes your consciousness. One of the interesting desires that humans have, according to a number of surveys, is this desire for immortality. And science tells us that we are absolutely mortal. And religion says, no, you are on some level immortal, but it's, very clear that you will die. And nobody knows what happens really after death, other than you may go to heaven or you may go to hell, but we don't really know exactly where those places are. And there's no real easy way to find out if someone went to hell or went to heaven. So the best idea is to assume that everybody must have gone to heaven, and that would be pretty good. And then they would stay there. And so that's all right. But then when somebody dies, you cry, you see. So then if you cry about somebody going to heaven, there's some kind of issue of logic, because if somebody goes to heaven, you should be overjoyed. But why do you cry? Because you say, well, I lost them, they're dead. See, they're not coming back. So we have a lot of confusion about whether or not we're mortal or immortal. And so the third eye allows you to see that the person that you're in relationship with, or that you encounter, or whatever, the actual person is invisible. And what you can see is their face, their form, their body, how they look, how old their body is. But the soul itself doesn't have an age. And so the third eye allows you to see that this person who you can see physically, behind the physical, there is actually an immortal spiritual being, and that is the one that you're actually relating to, and that you yourself are an immortal, invisible spiritual being who is occupying a perishable body. And you will occupy that body for as long as it is running properly. Because when people die, they usually die of some illness or some accident. And then some people die of just old age, which means your body just doesn't work anymore, it's too old. And then comes the question of whether or not a person reincarnates. So the concept of the third eye and the knowledge of the third eye actually brings you to face this question about the continuity of existence. And people do feel that there is continuity. And when they lose someone, they very often feel that they encounter them, or they meet them, or they feel their presence. And so there is so much in the human experience that goes counter to the ideas that science and much of religion will tell us that, okay, once they're dead, that's it, they no longer exist. And yet there are many experiences, very subtle experiences, that let us know that, no, it can't be so. And even when people think about their existence, they say, it doesn't have any meaning to just appear, live life relatively meaninglessly, and then disappear. It doesn't make sense. We need to understand the sense of existence. And, when people think about these things, it becomes difficult because there's not much information that is satisfactory. And so the knowledge of the third eye is so incredibly important because it answers your questions about existence. And it says very clearly that you need to develop the ability to perceive the soul. And you cannot perceive the soul through your eyes, but you can perceive the soul through the mind. And the mind is a kind of organ of perception, but it deals both with sense perception as well as perception that is not through the senses. And this is why you have something like intuition and other aspects of perception that science will say is not real, but people who perceive in these ways will say, well, it's real as far as I'm concerned. And so thank you very much. But you don't have information about it. And if you experience that it's real, that experience is a kind of information already, but you need more clarity, I think. And so when we study Raj Yoga, we are not studying just how to meditate, but we are studying details about what you will meditate on, because meditation is actually to think about the invisible reality of human existence. And when you're meditating, you are thinking very deeply about the concepts that describe the invisible dimension of human existence. You know, everybody wants love. And what is love? So people describe it in different ways, which is not really about what love is, but signs of love. So if someone is nice to you, they say, okay, they love me. That means the sign of love is to be nice to someone. And then people think of it in terms of it and its opposite. So they might love me or they might hate me. And so if they love me, I'm happy. If they hate me, I'm not happy. So you have feelings connected with these things. But, you know, love is really not a feeling. It's much deeper than that. And the third eye is such an instrument that it can actually understand such things as love, not just only by the signs of it, but what it is itself. And that is outside the range of normal human perception, but it is within the range of the kind of meditation and contemplation that you do using this instrument, the third eye, which is this eye of understanding. So understanding and study go together. And then you need to think about what you're understanding, because there's an interpretation involved. So interpretation is, what is my take on what the information that I'm presented with is telling me? And so it has a very subjective component. Science will say that objective reality is real and subjective reality is more or less imagination. But in spirituality, we say no. We say that objective reality is something that you perceive through your senses. And then spiritual definitions will say that anything that you perceive through your senses is unreliable or deceptive. You get an appearance of something which may or may not actually be that thing. The invisible realities are really three. There are three realities that we can discern with the third eye. And one reality is the self as a spiritual being. You can discern this. And a big part of meditation is to think about yourself, because you are given information about your body and told that this is your identity. And then when you come along to spirituality, and spiritual information that you need to think about using your third eye. And your third eye is this instrument, an instrument of understanding as well as an instrument of perception to deal with information that is, in many cases, quite in opposition with the information about reality that we receive through science, through our education and culture and so on. For example, everyone is told, okay, you're either a male or a female, you see, and spirituality says, well, actually, no. Self doesn't have a gender. And, people are so very, very concerned about gender. And now we have LGBT and a number of other initials because people have a hard time really identifying themselves as a particular gender. And this is a sign that the spiritual angle on what a self is in a way coming through, because your maleness and femaleness is a factor of your reproductive organs, and your biology is not your identity. But otherwise, science and religion have told us that it is. And people have accepted it, but then the internal feeling is no. And so one of the first things that the third eye will show you and tell you is, I am not my body. And so you can understand what you are not. Okay, I'm not my body, but then what am I? So there you have to think rather deeply. I am a spiritual being. What is a being? Well, beings are not physical. So we have to work with this third eye to be able to be comfortable perceiving the self in a non-physical way as a being who is not an object. And we make a difference, you see. A body actually is an object, and a being is a person. And so you start to look at your body in the mirror and say, hey, self, this is my body, but it's not me. And so you really want to understand, okay, what is me? So one angle of approach is, well, I am not male or female. I am a being. I'm an intelligence. I am a heart, a mind. I am a being who operates this body rather like a robot. And nowadays, technology has given us AI, it's given us robots, it's given us all kinds of instruments of technology to let us understand much more clearly than before that there is a clear difference between the hardware and the software. And so, yeah, the being is more like the software. And you don't really see software, you see signs of it, but itself, it's like it operates the hardware. So I'm the one who operates this body. And, when you change your computer from one to another, because after all, they get old and they get out of date and the memory is too small and so on, you have to get a new one. You might bring your operating system from one to another. And so you can understand that the being, the intelligence, is really quite different from the instrument, the body. And you start being more able to think about the self as something non-physical. And because of technology, you see how people who have various health problems that don't allow them to operate their body, that they can do what they want to do through a computer or through a robotic part of the body. And this also helps you to understand that, hey, yeah, I can perfectly well understand that I am not my body, and I use a body or an alternative body to get what I want done. So I am a doer, and my body is a tool with which I do things. So it gives you, you see, gradually a more and more different perspective. And then you want to look at the energy of being, because this is also a matter of inquiry, the life force, you see. Because when someone's dead, the life force is gone. So where? Where did it go? And if I say, okay, I am the life force, so if I go, it means I need to know where I'm going and why. And there we start to think about this philosophy of karma, which talks to us about the consequences of what you do. And so you start thinking, okay, it matters what I do. It matters what I think, you see. And thinking is very interesting because it's non-physical. I mean, when you think a thought, obviously it's done through your brain, and your brain is part of the hardware. But when you think a thought, who can pick it up? Some people can, you know. And so then we start to think about things like Bluetooth and other computer information technology that allows us to pick up ideas wirelessly. And then we start thinking about telepathy, which is a way of communicating with another being through thought. So some people can pick up thought, and some people pick it up all wrong, so it's not very reliable at this present time. But with the third eye, you at least start thinking that what I think matters, because it is a form of karma, it's a form of action. So the spirit, the soul, produces thoughts, and these thoughts generally are made into words or acts, you see, which are audible and visible. So that comes into the realm of sense perception. But if you just have a thought, that's not in the realm of sense perception. Yet, you know very well that if somebody is thinking something but not telling what they're thinking, there's an atmosphere and vibration that is produced by those thoughts, and you can pick it up. If they're displeased with you, they don't believe you, they don't like you, something like that, you'll pick it up. And this is the mind picking up the thoughts and atmospheres and feelings that are going on in other people's minds, which are actually quite tangible, but you don't pick it up through sense perception, which means you really begin to understand that there's a difference between sense perception, your ears, your eyes, your nose, your tongue, your skin, and then there's another one. People call it the sixth sense, but the sixth sense is just simply being able to pick up what's going on in the atmosphere, in the minds of people, and it's for real. And so you go gradually further and further, and you start to give you start to rely on your intuition more. of course, it's very easy to get it wrong. And what makes us get it wrong and what makes us get it right? I think one aspect of getting it wrong is that we make interpretations based on preconceptions. We try to read things based on what other people say. You know, if somebody is twitching, it means this. If they're humming, it means that, you know, and it's not necessarily. But as you meditate more and as you become more subtle in your own sense of self, you start to be able to pick up on things and get feedback which indicates that, yeah, you got it right. And so this process of developing the third eye and understanding spiritual information, it takes a long time. You can't do it just like that. You can have a nice feeling and a nice experience just like that, which we all do when we're introduced to meditation. That's always happens. But when you want to really study it and really deepen it, you have to have patience, because it takes time to go from gross consciousness to progressively more subtle consciousness. And so the third eye also implies that you're on a journey to raise and refine your consciousness. And this also brings in another word, which is conscience. I think conscience is very much connected with the third eye. So the third eye is not just only the mind's eye, because the inner world also contains our intelligence or our understanding, which is different from just perceiving feelings and things like that. The third eye can tell if something's true or false, right or wrong. And sometimes on a physical level, you can prove something's right or wrong to a certain satisfaction. But if a person's third eye is very developed and operating, you will discern truth and falsehood on a much more subtle level. And something which may be grossly true or false, when you take it to a subtle level, it's not actually what you thought it was. You think it's true, but it's false. Or you think it's false, but it's true, because you take into consideration many more elements than you can just on a physical level. But this takes practice and it takes time, because you have to really develop, you have to really grow. So spirituality does require study, patience, time, and it's not such an easy, simple thing as sometimes people believe. It's deep. But if you pursue it and you persist in your practice, your third eye will become clearer and clearer as time goes by. And you will also know whether what you're thinking, what you're about to do is wise or not. You have much higher ethical standards, because your conscience becomes much more functional than according to how people normally calculate right and wrong. So you get this much subtler sense of everything. And because of this, you're able to become a better reader of character. It's very important to be able to understand what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, because people are very complicated. You yourself are very complicated. It's very easy to look like something and actually be something else. And so the third eye enables us to discern the difference between what something looks like and what it is, what someone's intentions seem to be and what they are. Whether somebody really likes something or they're just pretending. So this power of discernment, which is really, very important in life, is something that gets enhanced very much with the development of the third eye. And so the third eye development is partly just daily experience and interaction with people in regular life, but there's also a study about it. And the other aspect of the third eye, not just the self, not just other beings, but also the divine source, which you may call God. And this is very, very difficult for a human being to discern. And so mostly people believe or don't believe, but they don't know, you see. And with the third eye, you're able to take your doubt to something clearer, your belief to something closer to understanding, knowledge, and really seeing. But this takes a long time. And so you need also, with the third eye, to have information that comes from the divine source that says, more clearly exactly what a being is and what's the difference between a human being and an animal being. What's the difference between a human being who is considered to be the highest on the, food chain, you can say, and then a being which is higher than a human being, which is outside the range of perception of a human being, but which people know, yeah, there is something there. And some people, they just are happy to say, okay, there is something there, and that's good enough for me. But then others say, no, I want to know what this is or who this is. I want to be able to communicate. And so the third eye is the instrument that you will need for this. Because the communication between yourself, the non-physical being, and such another completely non-physical, invisible, intangible being requires you to move out of being limited to the material universe to get access to the non-material universe. And so that doesn't mean black holes or something like that, or antimatter, no. So along with the soul, along with the supreme being or God, we also, through the third eye, can grasp that there is a dimension which is non-material, where souls can be when they're not here in the material, and where the Supreme Soul is. And if you want to have contact, you have to go there. And so one very important part of meditation is something that we call soul consciousness. So there's a difference between what we call body consciousness and what we call soul consciousness. So body consciousness is to be operational only in the material universe. It's not really about whether you're being a good person or a bad person. That's not really what body consciousness is. But body consciousness is that you function only through the sense organs, and your sense of reality is only material. And you think of people as males and females, and you're not able to perceive beyond that. Soul consciousness is the practice of really seeing that a person is not male or female. And this mention that I gave earlier about the deity from India called Shankar, when he opens his eyes, the world burns up. That means you need to be able to see that anything material is basically combustible or perishable. And you train yourself to look past the perishable material things. And, that can be scary for people. So you have to do it slowly, gently, little bit at a time, and take time to grasp it and begin to live in such a way that you are in the material world as well as having easy access to the non-material world, which means that you're seeing both the appearances and the spiritual meaning behind the appearances. And of course, as you start to play with this and expand your consciousness in that sense, you begin to realize how important it is to be able to become free from seeing people only according to preconceptions, and people don't even realize the extent to which they operate on the basis of preconceptions until they start really trying to operate on the basis of perception as opposed to preconception. So what are you seeing? What are you feeling? Is it real? Is it not real? How do you check? And then looking at yourself, are you for real? Are you deceiving yourself? Are you conscious about what you're doing and the consequences of what you're doing really? Or are you just fooling yourself? So these pieces of information come in slowly and gradually, and you find yourself slowly intensifying the quality of your perception about things that are real but not tangible, and taking it into consideration in how you live, how you treat people, and whether you're treating people as an object or whether you're really seeing the spiritual being and the spiritual qualities of that being, and not just operating on the basis of sense perception alone. So you want to have a third eye? It's not that you already have one, you need to receive one. How do we receive one? And I think the first steps of receiving the third eye is to desire, deeper understanding, to desire to raise your consciousness. And this makes you a seeker. And when you are a seeker, they say a seeker of truth or a seeker of knowledge, there are different descriptions that you have, but if you're just not satisfied with just basic sense perception, and you're on a quest, and you want to understand who you are, you want to understand what the world is about, what life is about, what is the intangible dimension, and this feeling inside of a quest takes you on this journey. And in fact, Raj Yoga is a journey, and it's a journey that actually you continue with for your whole life, because it's a journey about what is life and what is beyond life. And so you have this aspect of your life. You have regular, everyday, ordinary life going on, and then you have this other much deeper aspect of existence that's going on at the same time. And so you live in a way like an ordinary and an extraordinary life at the same time. And there are times when you need to open your eye and see that everything is not what it seems. Everything is perishable. And in the sense of everything you can see is perishable, but that the being itself is imperishable. And so we need to be very aware that no being can die. Only bodies can die. And all objects, as science has told us, this is energy. and the form of an object will fall apart and it'll become something else. And this helps us to be detached, not be attached to the form, the physical representation, not to think that that representation is the thing itself or the being themselves. And then it changes how we love people, how we think about people. It makes us more sensitive and more resilient to appearances and disappearances. It makes it easier to let go. I don't really like to use the word forgive, but let go I like. And be easy with people, however they are, let it be. And then you don't have to be caught up in emotional roller coasters and great disappointments and betrayal and this and that. You become much more easily able to handle these challenges. So that is quite, I would say, quite helpful. And it allows you to live on more of an even keel and make less mistakes. You kind of, the third eye shows you in advance, hey, don't do that. Think about what's going to happen if you do that. And so you have like a friend. Your third eye is really like a good friend that it's like an internal guide, because there are things you know and things you perceive that if you would be in gross consciousness, you wouldn't take into consideration or you wouldn't even notice. So to me, the third eye is an extraordinary gift, but it's something that you have to take care about and look after. It's very easy to disregard its value. And there's this saying, you use it or you lose it. And it's the same with the third eye. If you don't use it all the time and you disregard its messages, you no longer have access. So to care for it, to give it importance in your life, to practice, to use it, is the way that it becomes more refined, more enhanced, more reliable. So these are a few thoughts about the third eye that I wanted to share with you. And maybe not very many people think about all this stuff, but I find it absolutely fascinating. It's something that you deepen slowly on your journey through life. And it takes, you can hardly ever say, okay, I understand everything about it. Okay, what's next? No, you've understood a bit, but there are layers upon layers upon layers that you peel away. And gradually you get to see the extraordinariness of the invisible, the intangible, the world of the reality of the sort of combination of matter and spirit, which is really very, very special.